Everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the Tunisian Crochet Summit. So for this session, I am joined by a very special guest all the way from Australia. So we have Abbey from Abbey Made. And I am just going to point out that there is a little QR code up in the top corner there if you are watching this and you haven't already registered for the summit. So it's not too late. We still have all of yesterday's videos available, and the day 2 videos will be coming up very, very soon. So Abbey, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us how you got started with Tunisian crochet and what kind of projects you're working on, and I guess all about Tunisian crochet hooks as well, because that's what your class was about.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone. So as Sarah was saying, my name's Abbey, and my designer name is Abbey Made, and I focus on Tunisian crochet wearables. I've been doing TC for since about 2012 was the first time that I picked it up, and I'm always laughing that it was the first yarn craft that I actually took up. So I can't knit, and I learnt TC before I could crochet. So I did everything backwards, and as a result, I'm obsessed with Tunisian crochet. Like, I started and then just kept going. And so basically I taught myself from library books on the most part. I've still got quite a good collection up here, and I keep adding to it as I go, because I just think that they're the best resources everywhere. So yeah, I started off just by doing little tiny swatches, which are about this big, and I still have them tucked away in my little drawers, and every now and then I'll pull them out and go, look how far I've come, which is very nice. But yeah, when I first started doing TC, there wasn't a lot of wearable TC, and what was wearable was really suitable for the northern hemisphere, not for the southern. It was everything that I saw was chunky, Aran and bulky weight, and we can't get much of that yarn in Australia because no one buys it. It's not hot enough, not cold enough. So it was pretty soon into my TC journey that I realized that I wanted to do TC clothing, and doing it in size inclusive ways, especially. So my design philosophy is that I don't publish unless it is size inclusive. And what you'll see from a lot of my patterns is that I have options, and I have had feedback that I have too many options in some of my patterns. So I've got one of them here. So one of my best sellers, well, it is my bestseller, is a pattern called Diamonds Not Pearls, which is a Tunisian entrelac pattern. And there are options for like a skinny neckline and a wide neckline, and then a bigger bust and a littler bust, and how to decrease or increase on the torso or the sleeves, or how to make it shorter. And I had one lady say, oh no, that's too many options, it's too confusing. But then everybody else is like, we love this, keep doing it. So that's what I'm doing. So yeah, that's that pattern.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, this one was it's an entrelac pattern series called Tessellate Me, and it was my COVID project. So this was one of the first things that I did during one of the big COVID lockdowns in Sydney, back in 2020, wasn't it? It's been 4 years. So yeah, that's what I did there. And so this one, quick secret, you don't actually need a TC hook to make this. You can use one of these.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. I think I have that exact hook, and it's one of my favorites. All the color has worn away from it. I've used it so much. Yeah, I love those actually, and they're very inexpensive.
Yeah, exactly. These are Clover Armours, Amore. I love them. They're the best in my view, for standard crochet. But yeah, you can't use hooks like that for things like this. So yeah.
That entrelac one is a work of art. Was it difficult to grade, when you had to deal with like a pretty fixed square? I know you could make the squares bigger as you went along, but if you want to have really kind of tightly, like really tight maths, I suppose, to get really specific measurements, it's a big unit to work with, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And so they do get bigger. So they start really little. So the smallest size are 2x2s. And so they're So it's an entrelac triangle, which is 2 rows by 2 stitches high, and then an entrelac square, which is 2 by 2, and then they get gradually bigger. So this one, you can see they're quite big there versus little up the top. But that pattern, I've graded it into 15 sizes. So it starts off. That one I didn't do my current numbering. Like I've changed the way that I do things, but that one is sizes, I think it's 2 to 14 for children, and then it starts extra small up to, it's either 5X or 6X. So yeah, there's a lot in there. And so I've had people make that for little toddlers as well as size inclusive adults. And what I love about it is that you can make it short sleeve, long sleeve, and you can turn it into a dress as well. So I've made a version for my daughter that doesn't fit her anymore, but yeah, that was just in a dress form that the squares just keep getting bigger, so you can flare it out and, you know, twirl around in it. But yes, it was quite tricky to grade, and which is why doing it during COVID was a good thing, because I actually had the mental capacity to do it. Whereas now, not so much. You know, work is all back to normal. So,
so you work full time and you design every other minute.
Basically,
Is
it? I've been making stuff anyway. So the way I see it is, you know, I'm quite formulaic with how I do it. So my round neck jumpers they're following the same formula. Okay. All I'm changing is the gauge. I am changing techniques a little bit. So this design, for example, this is Ginnon, which was in Morat magazine 2 years ago. And I played around with raising the back of the neck on this one, but I did it at the armpit bridge. So it's here. That's where the extra.
So you didn't do it here?
No, because I couldn't. I wasn't clever enough to figure it out. However, it's been on my radar. I want to do it here, so I've got a whip right now that I'm doing it on. So I spent a lot of time in the last year working on short row tutorials, and I did that for a batwing sweater, which is this one here. So this one is called Warumbi, which means bat in the Darawal language. So where I live is in Darawal country. So for those who don't know, that is the indigenous area. So it's based on geography, and they have particular names. So Darawal has its own language. So I like to draw a little bit from that where I can. So yeah, instead of just calling this the bat wing jumper, it's called Warumbi, which means bat, right? But there's a series of short rows, it's really hard to see on here, but it's all along the top. And what that does is that it brings those sleeves down on a really gentle slope, and you can't see them unless you're looking really closely. You can probably see the ends of them along there. So I've done a whole heap of tutorials on short rows, and so I've sort of mastered it in my head now on how I can move forward. So I have just split for sleeves actually on my next jumper, which has short rows at the back. And then I'm so excited about this. I have figured out how to do bust darts.
Oh, we were talking about those yesterday, and I was asking Andrea, is it really hard to write the pattern, and how do you even write it, because everyone has such a different
exactly
bust size. Yes.
And so I've written the instructions already. So I've had to frog that particular sample a couple of times because I've had to muck around with my maths a bit, but it's right now. So I've actually written it in a recipe style. So essentially, I'm only doing this at the moment on a top-down jumper. So you put the yoke on. I can actually demonstrate it because I have it right here. So I can do that.
Definitely show us. So when you're working in the round, are you joining? You're joining. So you're working with like the double-ended. No. So you just work with both.
Where's my hook?
I'm intrigued to see how you do this now, because this is definitely.
I've got to find my hook. There it is. Okay, so I work in the connecting stitch. So the reason why I do that is because I've worked a fair bit with mosaic crochet, and In mosaic, you can't work double-ended because it's a spiral.
Yeah.
So we want to avoid the spiral, and I want to avoid a jog in the
Yes.
rows.
Yes,
And
because you
so
can't have that with color work. Yeah.
exactly. And so not everything I do is in color work. Like this one uses the connecting stitch as well. It does give a seam. So this is all in simple stitch. Can you see that line?
Yeah,
So
but I mean, there are seams in most things.
it's really neat. It's straight
Yeah.
down the back. And I
Yeah.
haven't blocked this yet, right? This is raw crochet. So this is a raglan style jumper.
Yeah.
All right. Now,
So it's
see
on
how
your
that's
back.
the back? It's taller, right?
Yeah.
So there's a series of short rows in the back,
Okay.
and they're so subtle.
Yeah, it's hard to see, isn't it? So you worked some rows, and then you started going in the round. Is that it?
Yes. And
Yeah.
then, see, I've just split for sleeves. Let's see if I can demo this, right? I'm literally one row past the sleeves, and I'm about to make bust darts on this. Hang on.
Okay.
Now, see where those markers are?
Uh-huh.
They're right on my nipples, right?
Okay.
Anyway, I mean, that's what you've got to do when you're doing bust darts.
That's what you got to do. Yeah.
Exactly. And I've written a formula, and it's literally working in between the rows, right? But then each row gets a little bit wider.
Okay.
Right. And it's creating a wedge. So I've practiced this a couple of times, and it is working, and I'm thrilled with it. So I'm going to publish that eventually on my blog, probably with a YouTube tutorial. It is not as hard as it sounds, but it is in they're what's called center short rows. And so for this one, I'm doing narrow to wide short rows. So the first row is the narrowest, the next one gets a little bit wider, and so on. Right. And so you need to learn a couple of little tweaks, which I've already published on my blog.
Yeah, you have a really good blog post about it, actually. Maybe I'll see
Yeah.
if I can find
So
a direct
I'll
link.
recommend to everybody that they go and study that before you launch into it, because there's a few little things that you need to know before you get in there. But it's not as hard as I thought it would be. And especially in, we want to make sure that this fits every single body. And I actually think doing it that way in a formula, try it on, pop a marker, right where your nipples are, tweak it a little bit, and then you can work your short row magic to make the jumper that fits you best. So I'm really excited to get that one tested and out into the world. So probably in the second half of this year, because I have a few other patterns that are ready to go before then.
Yeah. Is your day job involving lots of maths? Is it a technical kind of job? Because it sounds like you're really getting stuck into that side of it.
Yeah, not really, but I do a lot of analytical work. So I don't advertise publicly what I do. So I work for the Australian government.
Okay,
That's all I'm going to say. But a lot of what I do is involving Excel spreadsheets. So I'm known in my office as the Excel queen.
Okay.
And look, I'm not to the point where I could go and do Excel competitions at some techno expert. I'm not that good, right? But
formulas, you're very good.
I'm good with formulas. I'm good with formatting, and that those skills they're interchangeable. And I think once you know them, like, you're essentially set for life in any sort of space where you're doing a lot of analytical work.
Yeah. I think Excel is running the world sometimes, because I have worked for banks in the past, and there's literally entire systems for trading and everything built on Excel spreadsheets. Like, it's insane actually what it can do. So yeah, I think you're right. Once you get your head around Excel, you can do a lot in terms of pattern.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have someone here who says she loves a good Excel spreadsheet.
Well, look, I've got some rather large ones for some of my
I can imagine.
So I think the one that I did for this one, for Diamonds Not Pearls, I think I've got a tab on every, like, for every size on there, working out all the measurements.
Oh, right. So they're not even on the same sheet.
For that one, no,
For that
because I
one.
had to muck around with it. Normally they are, and they just go all the way down.
Yeah.
And I've even got pretty formulas in there for, you know, when I'm expressing my stitch counts at the end, it's got all the brackets in there, and I just have to copy and paste it into my Word doc, and away I go.
I feel like you could have another side hustle selling your spreadsheets. It sounds like. We do have someone asking what you're wearing, so I put a link to your Pay Hip shop there, and I think.
Let me stand up a little bit.
Just tell us the name of it again.
It's called Ginnan, so it's Ginan.
Yeah, if you go to the shop link there, it's like the third row down. So yeah, that's beautiful. I think I'm going to have to make that entrelac one. I love that.
Look, I highly recommend it. It's really incredibly popular.
Oh, what yarn is it?
Well, this was it's hand dyed. It was by a really little dyer in Western Australia called Dragonfly Dye Yarn. She was just starting out, and I found her on Instagram, and she had this colorway. I think it was this one. And I said to her, "Can you have a go at making a fade with that color?" And so that's what she did. So look, I know that there are more subtle fades around, but it just worked. So
it's beautiful. No, it's really beautiful. Because actually often you see entrelac and it's very defined color blocks, and I really like the way you have done that there. It just looks more natural or something. I really like it. Okay, I'm going to have to put that on my list along with all the other million things that I want to make. But anyway, I have one question that somebody submitted beforehand, so I'm going to ask that if it's okay. So she's saying, when working with yarn of uneven width, such as hand spun or art yarn, how would you suggest figuring out what size hook to use? That's a good question.
Art yarn.
I guess, you know, sometimes you get like, you can get the hand dyed yarn that's like different. Oh, yeah, like that.
This is hand spun.
Yeah.
That's probably the closest I've got in my stash for that. Look, to be honest, for something like this, which is just something that I have in my stash, I wouldn't try to make clothing out of yarn like this. For me, I think it's more suited to cowls, shawls, little things like, you know, little things like this is perfect for yarn like that. And my advice for absolutely every yarn: swatch, play around with your hooks and just see what works best, because there's it's very difficult to predict how it would be with this. I would sit there and pull a few different hooks out and just play with swatches and see what fabric looks best. You know, does it do this? You know, that's what we're looking for with our fabric, I think.
Yeah. I guess it depends what you want the fabric to do, doesn't it? Like if you're making some kind of a home decor item, maybe you want it to be quite stiff, so then you might use a much smaller hook that matches like the inner part of the yarn. But then if you want obviously a wearable, you're going to go with the larger hook. So yeah, I think that's exactly the point. So I want to ask you about something that blew my mind in your video, and I have two hooks here so that I can show you so you can see them. Okay, so I knew about the pointy tip for Tunisian crochet. I knew that was preferable, and obviously you can understand why, because you're pulling up the loop, so it makes it easier. What I did not know about was that the pointiness of the lip, and it's really hard to see, there it's better, and how much space you have in here. I can't remember what the name of it. What did you call it? Is it the mouth or something? I don't know.
There's the mouth and the bowl.
The bowl, that's what I'm thinking of. So I did not realize that made such a difference. And as I was watching your video, so I was crocheting obviously, and I kept on the return pass pulling 3 loops instead of 2, and it was driving me insane. And then you said about that, and I was like, oh my god, that's fine. This is like the bowl is too big.
Yes, I have a couple of hooks in my original collection which are like that, and I actually think that I've had Hamish file them down for me. Like, let's see that one is reasonably long. It drives me nuts. Like this is my original hook collection. I don't use any of them anymore. Like I pull them out for demo purposes because I mean, look, no offense to all the commercial yarn companies, but I have a hook maker who sleeps in the same bed as me. So, you know, I'm going to use his, right? And, you know, he's played around with the shape of his hook for a number of years. So this one is the one that I'm using on this jumper right now. And look, when I look at it, let's see if I do that, you'll probably see it a bit clearer.
Yeah.
It still has quite a deep bowl, but it's that tip that's hanging down at the bottom here. If that is too long, that's the bit that
that's what's wrong with my one.
It's the return pass. You just can't get that rhythm going. And on something as big as a jumper, like when you're working that last couple of rounds of the yoke, like on that pattern now, for my biggest size, it's about 550 stitches on one round. That's a lot. So
if you're getting stuck every few stitches, that's going to drive you insane, isn't it? And the return pass is supposed to be like something you can do kind of without even having to look at it, that you just keep going. So if I look at this one here, so this is a bamboo one. This is a commercial one too, but I actually kind of like it. So that's got a much, hold it up. No, that's better, is it? Yeah.
That's better.
The lip, is that what it's called? So that's not as long.
You're testing my memory. It's been quite a while since I wrote that, actually. Yeah, I have to look it up. So please don't yell at me if I say the wrong
Anyway,
thing.
it's that pointy bit that's sticking down. We're talking about that.
Exactly.
I had focus there, but yeah.
Yes, but yeah, there is a diagram on my blog and in the material that you've put up with the summit. So if anyone wants to know a little bit more, please go ahead and read. And look, I did
a really good article. It's really in depth. It's excellent.
Yeah, well, look, that article has been published before. So I wrote it a number of years ago for an Australian yarn magazine, and I've updated it. But yeah, I've studied hooks quite intimately. I mean, I've got a bit of a collection, but you know what? I'm actually not a hook connoisseur, so I know that there are designers that like to have, you know, all the different brands. So one of the best examples would be Toni Lipsey, TL Yarncraft. So she's done some amazing hook reviews and blogs. She did one a couple of months ago on her YouTube where she rated all the hooks, and Hamish's catch hooks were one of them that were rated on there, and she gave him a 9 out of 10. Which,
excellent.
Which was the second highest score that she gave. So her biggest gripe was his ordering system. And you know what? I get it. We both get it. But what we're trying to explain to everyone is that this is a side hustle. And it's not a full-time job. It's not a career for either of us. It's fun. Look, one day it might be. But you know, we've got a mortgage to pay. So it's not going to happen anytime soon, but we have changed things up a little bit. So and it's usually me that does it because Hamish is not an administrator. So yes,
just wants to be out in the shed making hooks.
Basically, yeah. He refuses to have a website. He does not.
Oh, does he?
He refuses, and it's because he doesn't want to pay more fees to other you know, places where it gets hosted. So I've tried talking him into other things, even PayHip, which is what I'm using for. I mean, look, I don't have a huge amount of sales on PayHip, but I have that for the blog, which, look, I know it's only little, there's not heaps on there, but I think what is on there is meaningful. So I'm only going to put things on there if it is, you know, I'm not going to waffle away and expect people to read, you know, my musings on how much rain there is in Sydney this week.
Yeah. No, they're excellent. I've read your articles and you can tell that they're really well thought through and you have really go into a lot of detail on all the different topics. So yeah, they're a really good resource. And Andrea had pointed me to your tutorials and short rows as well. So yeah, they're really excellent. So how did Hamish get started with the hooks? Was it because you couldn't find anything suitable?
Well, it actually predates my crochet. So, so I mentioned before that my mother's a knitter, like she's a lifelong knitter, and she was, and this, it's a bit of a family joke, right? My mother cannot crochet, but she wrote this series of articles for an Australian magazine. at least 15 years ago, probably a bit longer. And it was about TC, and she taught herself from something, and she wrote these articles, and then she said, Abby, I can't get the hooks anywhere. Like, she was just using probably something like this, or probably something crappy from Spotlight, which is the Australian version of, I don't know, Michael's, but much smaller and not as good. No, and so he said, oh, I'll have a go, and I've actually got some of his original hooks up there. I won't dig them out, but they're bad. They're made from dowel. I mean, all of the wooden hooks that he made are made from dowel. And there's limited diameters that you can get of this in Australia, and a lot of them are in imperial measurements, so they're in inches, right? And crochet hooks don't come in inches and quarter inches; it's millimeters.
It has to be, because they're, I mean, an inch is too big, or even
exactly
quarter inch is too big.
Yeah. So I think this one's one of his 9s, but it's not actually 9. It's like a 8.7. Like, if he gets his calipers out, it's almost impossible to get them right. So yeah, his first ones were dowel, and they were made for my mother and some of her friends who were trying to learn TC, and they just wanted rigid hooks with a bead on the end. So these are his original sort of ones, but with a much nicer hook tip than they used to be. They used to be much worse than that. And so his first ones have got, like, they're not smooth at all. Like, they've got ridges in the bowl and the lip. And I thought they were.
You don't want splinters when you're crocheting, sure you don't.
Yeah, well, when you don't know any better. But yeah, that it predates my crochet, and so he'd made a handful of them for Mum, and she was selling them at her local knitters group.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, $10 a pop here and there. Every now and then she'd show up and give him $50 and say, "Here, I sold 5 hooks for you." And so when I started, he wasn't making his hooks at all, and I just bought whatever I could get my hands on, and there really wasn't much in Australia at the time. In the local yarn stores in Sydney, I could only get one brand, which was Knit Pro, and they're very popular in Australia too, very accessible. So they're for anyone who doesn't know, that's this kind of laminated timber, and they come with the metal tip on the end. But and in my article, you'll see images of my Knit Pro hooks, and what I was trying to demonstrate with them is how different they can be. And that's, I think, mostly because I didn't buy mine in sets. I bought them individually when I could afford them. But if I hold that up, I don't know if you can see just how different they are. Like, this one here there's more wood in this top bit here, whereas this one here is much shorter, right? And so I find them to be inconsistent. But again, just with the proviso that I didn't buy them as a set, I bought them individually over time, and so it did change. But what that told me is that there was no consistency in how they were making them, and that was something that I was looking for.
Yeah. So now you can get that because he's pressing them. He's making the aluminium ones, is it? And pressing them.
That's right. And he's not pressing them. So they're not, these are not machine made, they're handmade. They're all hand carved. So he does have some shortcuts that make the production line faster for him. So he actually has something that's a little bit like a pencil sharpener. That does the rudimentary part of the tip, and then he finishes those off with his buffing wheels and sanding things. But the actual inner part there, that is all hand filed. And then he's anodizing each one. And anodizing is hard. So you will find occasionally the odd imperfection, and a lot of that will come down to the metal that he's sourcing. And again, just like with the timber dowels, making these ones, the big commercial producers of aluminium in Australia, they're making rods in imperial measurements. So it's really hard to get them in millimeters.
So they're not big enough to be able to use. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, it can be quite tricky. Look, most of the metal stock that he's getting is coming from overseas, just so that he can get the right dimensions for, just so that they're perfect. And he does run them through his calipers. It's more than one of these that he's poking it into, right? It is machine done properly so that they're nice and consistent. But I think what people love about them is all the different colors that you can do. So
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I get all of his experiments, or the ones that are flawed. So a lot of mine will have little imperfections in them. They don't matter. Like when it comes down to the coloring, it doesn't affect the use of the hook at all, even if there is a little imperfection in them. So every now and then it's like that. But he also now has a laser cutter. Let's see if I can find one. So his laser cutter allows him to engrave his hooks now. So he can put your name on your hook. And he can do it in, any font or any size that you want. And he can add the odd graphic. So he did a set a little while ago. I'm not sure if it was a gift for somebody or not, but it was someone who is Canadian. And I think he put their name on it, as well as a little Canadian maple leaf.
Oh, wow. So it's really nice for a gift as well. You could put anything on it, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So Ray is asking, how do I purchase one of these hooks?
Yeah. Yeah, so 2 questions. So I'll answer the second one. Does he ship to the US? Yes, absolutely. He ships everywhere. He will just ask for the state that you're in so that he can do a quote for the postage, because it will differ based on where it goes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like to Europe, it will be more expensive than to America and so on.
Oh, is it? Oh, no, that's not good for me.
But look,
I guess you can go over the Pacific to the US, can't you? So that's a bit shorter. Yeah.
Well, at least I think so. I mean, to be honest, I don't pay that much attention to what he's charging for postage. I just know that he goes on to the Australia Post website and puts the weight in and where it's going, and they give him a quote, and that's what he charges. To purchase one of his hooks, as I mentioned, he doesn't have a website. So the best resource to know what he can and can't do is on my PayHip blog. So it's payhip.com/Abbey Made, and there's a tab in the menu that says catch hooks. Okay, so it's one of the top buttons on there. So there's a really big blog post on there which is all about catch hooks. So it says a little bit about the history, and it says how to order. So you can email him, or you can do just a private message through either Facebook or Instagram. Any of those methods is fine. And once you've organized I'm just reading that now. Once you've organized what it is you want, he'll send you a PayPal invoice, and then you pay that when you're ready. And once you've paid, then he will do the order. So, but just remember, everyone, that he works full time. So this is a weekend and nighttime sort of thing. So, there is a little bit of a lag every now and then, but he really does try to pump these through as fast as he can.
Yeah. We do have someone asking how long it takes to make a hook. So I don't know if that means elapsed time from when you order to when it gets shipped, or how long does it physically take to make one?
To make a hook, look, he's churned them out for me in a couple of hours. When I've said, Hamish, I really, really need a 3.5mm hook, and I need it right now, please. And it's like, but do you want me to cook dinner or not?
Yeah.
You can do the hook. And so off he goes down to the shed, which I'm literally sitting on top of it. It's underneath me now. Look, I think because he kind of does them in a production line now, so he goes ahead of time, and he'll make hook blanks, so if he has time. So he'll start just on carving the tips, and then he won't do the end bit until he knows what kind of end you want on it. So that's the other thing, is that he can do cable compatibility either for Knit Pro or for ChowGoo. So Knit Pro Knit Pro is relatively universal. So it's the same thread as Knitter's Pride, and there's a couple that they're compatible with, and he does know which ones they are. And then Chalgu, but they're different. So Knit Pro is a female hook, as in you screw the cable into it, and Chalgu is male, so you screw the hook into the cable.
Okay. So
and they're different threads, so he has to give you an extra little piece to work into it. So I've got some Chalgus.
And does he have to do something different for the swivel cables versus fixed? It's the same. So it's the cable that determines that, is it? Not the hook?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So look, the ones that I recommend now are these ones, which are the Knit Pro Mindful cables. So the original Knit Pros that you get when you buy a set, in my view, they're foul. I hate them.
Yeah, I have those, and I didn't even realize you could get the swivel ones. And then when I discovered that, I was like, oh my God, this is just a million times.
Yes, they're mind blowing. And for anyone who doesn't know why that's mind blowing, it's especially important when you're working on long rows. So if, for example, if I was making this one, which goes all the way around the yoke, we're looking at it's in the vicinity of 400 stitches. As you build loops up along your cable, and if your cable doesn't swivel, the cable fights you when you're inserting it into your vertical bars, right? And so each time it's more effort with your hand, and it will drive you batty. So there's swiveling. So it's obviously hard to see, but look, I'm holding the cable and swiveling the hook. So look, in Australia, these are the easiest to get, which are the Knit Pro Mindful cables. But the other ones, which are also great, are the Chalgu swivels. Okay, so that's one of them here. And this is like a silver filament thread. I find them slightly more flimsy than the Knit Pros. So it will come down to preference and what's available close to you. So not every brand is available in your home country. So a lot of people lately, I think, have been talking about pony hooks. I have never seen them in Australia. I wouldn't know where to get them from. Like I'd have to source them from overseas. So look, just disclaimer on all of my recommendations is that it's coming from the spin of this is what we can get in Australia readily. So yeah, we're not affiliated with any of the brands, and we're not pushing any of them to anyone. We're just saying, well, we've tested them and this is what we think. So
yeah. So we have a comment here. I suspect he'll be busy for a while now after the summit. And I think he will, because I was even talking to Courtney yesterday and we were trying to figure out how can we get our hands on some of those hooks. So yeah, hopefully, Hamish, you're ready.
He did come into me this afternoon. I've got another bloody hook order. This really big one. For Singapore, and yeah, I think he got one that's 9 today and another one that's 6, and look, they just tick along. Just in the last 6 months, he's just had this constant stream of orders, and he keeps saying to me, well, surely everyone will have bought their hooks and they won't need any more. And I keep telling him no, because we are selling TC to a new audience now. You know, it's getting bigger than I've ever seen it before. You know, you're doing things like this and there are more designers out there. And I think that is simply amazing. You know, I don't see other TC designers as competition, because we are all doing our own little thing. And the techniques that we're using, you know, none of us have invented these. You know, we share amongst each other. So, you know, I did a series of blog posts on short rows, and now I know that Andrea is doing her own series on there, and I'm not offended by that at all. Like there are other ways of doing them, you know, that someone else may prefer. So I think that that's a good thing, you know, because someone might not like the way I teach or the way I write, but they love the way another designer does. So, you know, as long as they're still selling, you know, showing off their craft and wearing it, you know, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's wonderful to have even more people sharing now. So thank you. Yeah, you're doing a really good job for this craft, I think. So I think we're going to have to wrap up fairly soon because I'm going to have Aranima on next. So she's also in Australia. I'm not sure 100% sure where she is, but I know she's in Australia.
She's in Melbourne.
Oh, she's in Melbourne. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we haven't met in person yet. So I'm dying to meet her. So hopefully we will one day.
Yeah, I can imagine you won't stop talking about Tunisian crochet when you do meet.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just going to pop a link in here to the VIP pass before we finish up. So Abbey has contributed a beautiful cowl pattern to the pass for anyone that does want to check it out. And you can also get lifetime access. Oh, there it is. So it's the Star Wars cowl. Is that what it's called? I thought that was really cool.
It's called Space Invaders.
Space Invaders. Sorry. I knew it was something to do with space.
And it's not included, but there's a matching hat.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, so you can make the cowl first because that's a little bit easier and then go on to the hat. Beautiful. So that's great. And there's lots of other patterns in there from all of the other designers too. And you can keep Abbey's fantastic video all about Tunisian crochet hooks as well with the VIP pass. So yeah, if you want to check that out, please do. So I'm going to share a link in the Facebook group actually to our speakers page for the summit, and that is all of Abbey's links. And I hope I have added the links to catch hooks as well. But if I haven't, I'll add them in afterwards. So I'll share that to everybody, and then you can find links for all of the designers, their shops, blogs, Instagram, all that good stuff. Okay, thank you so much, Abbey. This has been the best chat. I honestly have learned so much, even just from your video and from talking to you for the last half an hour. So thank you so much. Okay, everyone, I'll see you back here very shortly for our next session. So take care. See you soon.